Or where'd he go?
Paul.
Oh, he's gonna making a dramatic entrance.
Back in a flash. I had to go run. I saw the dog making his way out the house. I'm like, no.
we are smack in the middle of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths now, and we have two entries that just blow things away. We had Dark Crisis, the Deadly Green, and we'll talk about Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue number 5. We'll do that right after this. So we are back. We are again, as I said, we are smack in the middle of this event series, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Count them, two entries this week. Not only Dark Crisis proper, but we get the one that we're going to talk about first, Dark Crisis: The Deadly Green. This is a Swamp Thing centric entry into the Dark Crisis overall arc. Right off the bat, I got to tell you, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, start to finish, it was great. And
Yep.
if you're reading the Rom V Swamp Thing stuff, it's definitely worth picking up. That series ended. This is kind of like the next step in where we see him and what's going on with him, and it gives some context to what we've seen of Swamp Thing in other places as well, because there has been 2 Swamp Things that we've seen spotted here and there as well.
Correct. We have Levi and Alec. We have both of them. So, and we'll see both of them in this issue as well. But we start with basically Jade and Obsidian going to the Hall of Justice, and they take us into the main part of the Hall of Justice. But then they take us down into the part of the Hall of Justice that we don't see that often.
The Justice League Dark's little quarters.
Exactly, the jail, and here we see Jonathan Kent, we see Nightwing, we see Levi, we see Yar, we see Dr. Fate, we see Raven, we see John Constantine, we see Alec Holland, and then we also have Alan, and then we're joined by Obsidian and Jade as well. So, and they're talking about what they need to do next, and they decide that what they need to do is, because Alan Scott's ring is magically based, what they need to do is they're going to actually use Alan Scott as a way into the darkness, to confront the darkness.
And they draw this awesome comparison between his ring shining light on darkness, and they were wanting to use it basically as a portal to get to this darkness without being corrupted by this darkness, using it as like a counterbalance. And this first page where we see all of them even is a huge homage to the first time we ever see the Justice League Dark. They're sitting around a table with their hands out as like they're in a seance like position. The first appearance of the Justice League Dark is a shared issue with the first appearance of the Great Darkness, where a seance takes place, which actually was the death of Zatanna's father during that seance. So this was another one of those crafty times DC is paying homage to the history of comic books. It is fantastic.
Yeah, they're sprinkled all throughout, and you almost, so many of them you can actually miss some of them if you're not, if you don't look at everything quickly enough. So, so they decide. Obsidian's not so sure he wants to do that, obviously, because of the danger it could present to his dad. But they all decided that that's really kind of the only way that they're going to be able to do what it is they need to do. So with a quick touch to the Green Lantern ring, they set off on their quest.
They make that connection. They did draw straws before we get here as the readers to know who's going to be going on this journey. They decided that the 2 Swamp Thing will go, as well as John Kent and Raven for each of their individual skill sets. And John just refuses to ask anybody to do anything he wouldn't do himself, very much like his father.
Correct, very much. And so they start in, and the first thing that they find is they find this black corridor, black column really, and where of the darkness. But then we switch as they're moving through. Well, when they first get there, they find that Alec Holland isn't with them anymore. Just Levi is there, correct, right? So they merged.
That's where the cool distinction is made. The difference between Levi and Alec. Once they've entered this realm, there's nobody to represent Alan. He's not a real person. Alec Holland has been dead. It's just his imprint of his life, his memory, the idea of Alec is imprinted on the green. Whereas Levi is a living person. He's represented physically there. Alec Holland is just represented inside Levi as the green. Like, that's something cool that people forget about. Like, Alan Moore really touched on that. Alec Holland is dead, been dead, died at the scene. But Levi is different. He's a living person tethered to the green. And I'm like, come on with it. Come on with it. Like, I love all the concepts and how deep it gets with Swamp Thing. It's just so fun.
Yeah, it really is. There are layers upon layers of everything.
And Robbie does great peeling them back.
Yep, absolutely. So they're moving along, searching for the darkness, and then we switch quickly to Constantine for a brief scene as he's just floating, and he comes into contact with something. We don't exactly know what it is. At least I wasn't exactly sure what it was.
No. He's floating in a void of darkness, and the first thing he says is, "This is familiar." So when they traveled in there, he didn't go with the rest of the team. He's ended up somewhere else. He was pulled away for a different reason.
Right. And so then we go back to the group of three, and this is where they find the black column. This is where they finally see the column of darkness, and so they kind of realize, what it is they need to do to try to defeat the black darkness. But they start to wonder if the other people, like if Raven is working against them. Is the Raven actually working for the darkness? Because she basically says, I fight the darkness every single day. You don't realize, this darkness is with me all of my life, every single day.
Yeah, it's at this point in the story as well. Artistically, it's represented. We start seeing like the infection of the darkness. They are inside the great darkness right now, just protected by the green flame, but it's still seeping in, and it's starting to affect them, their attitude, and their aggression levels with each other.
Right. You see the black tentacles start on John's neck and everything. And so, again, they start to kind of argue amongst themselves. And then, suddenly, John gets really upset and said, we should have figured out another way. And Raven has to blast Swamp Thing away. So it's almost kind of like it kind of mirrors kind of the Teen Titans in some ways. What's going on with the Teen Titans, what's going on with these, Young Justice rather, and what's going on with these three. And we see as they're starting to battle each other in the darkness, it's affecting Alan Scott back in the real world at the same time.
As the darkness is taking hold on them in the real world, it's causing Alan to have to use more of his power to what he feels is counterbalance it. It's taken a lot out of him. He's just lit up with the green flame, screaming. It's really intense. It's beautifully crafted.
Yeah, and Obsidian basically says that he wants to stop because of what it's doing to his father. And Dr. Fate comes in and says, you can't stop now, because if you stop now, the light will devour everyone who went into the ring. So you really can't stop. And so they say, that they just have to hope that he has the will to create the face, that he has the will to create in the face of what's going on inside of his ring. We jump then again back quickly to Constantine, and then back to the three of them, who the three of them end up seeing Trigon inside the ring. And they basically, Trigon says that everything that they're trying to do here isn't going to work. It's basically going to be Trigon actually is Constantine, not the other three. Trigon is this huge image that has Constantine in the face of his hand, which reminds me of, I know they're not connected, but it reminds me of when John Constantine faced the Spectre in the DC animated universe. Right?
Animated movie, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He had him in his hand.
I took this as like the Great Darkness just communing with him in different forms to try to convince him. It was basically talking to John Constantine, trying to demoralize him and let him know, tell him who he thinks he is, and convince him of all these pitiful things. Basically just try to stop them. They'll try to talk Constantine out. You picked the wrong person to try to talk out of something. That was a bad call. This guy's used to this.
Yeah, exactly. There is the back and forth between Trigon and Constantine, and then we jump back to the trio again. They're still arguing with one another, but it isn't until Raven decides to actually put her hand on Jonathan Kent that clears him of of the darkness that is happening inside of him, and that's when he basically says, we have to stop. He convinces Levi that Raven really is trying to help, and what they then decide to do is they decide to go into the darkness. John goes into the darkness, grabs something out of it. After in the real world, basically Jade and Todd get together. They end up holding hands and saying, you know what, we have to be able to help our father to do what he needs to do. Um, and then we go back and we find that what they're going to need to do is they need to try to find a way to basically all of them work together. And how they're going to work together is going to be this huge moment in this issue where Levi and Jonathan Kent are going to basically merge. They're going to fuse each other together.
Yeah, they figured out
Um,
that neither one of them can get into this structure by themselves. The darkness is just too great right there. It's disintegrating Swamp Thing. He needs that extra stability, and that's where the merger comes in. As y'all saw from the thumbnail of this video, that beautiful cover of John Kent and Swamp Thing fused together, and it was a moment just watching the green take hold. There's face to face, and it works his way up his hand and consumes
right.
him.
Right, and we see the S with the swamp, the vines overtaking the S, and then we see Swamp Thing, some of the vines over the face of Jonathan, but we don't get the full reveal of the Swamp Thing Jonathan Kent right away. We then go back to Constantine, who's actually talking with now what appears to be the physical manifestation of the darkness. Um,
Very loose
and
pitch as well. Like
yes,
with
yep.
wings, like kind of gives off fallen angel vibes almost.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it definitely looks like definitely is definitely a Lucifer. Um, uh, and so then we go back to Jade, Obsidian, and Alan again working together. They're convincing their father to do what he needs to do in order to defeat the darkness. And then what happens is they Alan says, thank God for you both. He collapses on the table doing what he needs to do, and that's then when we get the image of
Yeah,
just a great image of Jonathan Kent and the Swamp Thing combined, fused together, doing what he needs to do. He reaches into the darkness and he pulls out, surprisingly, the machine from the Crisis on Infinite Earths that Pariah used, basically. Um,
back in the
it's
'80s
it,
to start the whole crisis. Yeah, they in the middle of the darkness, they go in there and you see something is wrong, something's off, and he reaches out and that's what he pulls out. Pariah's machine, which is infecting the great darkness, and we're come to the realization that the great darkness is not in control of
right.
itself. It's not. It's acting out of pocket because Pariah has corrupted it.
Correct. That's the total 180-degree shift from what we had believed. We had thought that
Mhm.
the darkness had corrupted Pariah, and that was what the problem was, but that's not the case here.
Yeah. So he's tainted it, and somehow. So what I'm thinking, what it seems like is he's done meddled with stuff. He's great at meddling and ruining things. Apparently,
Mhm.
he meddled with the great darkness, and now it's out of control because of him, and even
Yeah,
infecting him still, but not on its own accord, kind of thing.
that's a great point. I think he has a history of meddling in things and then having his little experiments go out of whack
He's the
and get out
worst
of his control.
scientist in DC history.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, and then what happens is they all end up back in the justice, the Hall of Justice, and that's basically when they tell everyone there that okay, you know what, we've come to realize now exactly what you just said, that Pariah is the one who's controlling the darkness. The darkness is the one that is corrupted, and not the other way around. Um, and so they basically then basically just end up saying, okay, you know what, we have to now go back. We'll join up with the other heroes now that we have Pariah's machine, and we'll go from there, and that'll take us into the second, which is the Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue
Yeah.
number
And they
5.
did give us
The reason why
surprisingly
we did that,
they gave us
go ahead.
surprisingly little context to Constantine's time away. Like when they all went in, like they didn't really, I don't know, between each other in the book. You know, we as the readers know, but between each other in the book, there's really no explanation between Constantine to the rest of the team of what he encountered, what he dealt with. That was the only that's probably my only knock against this issue. It would have been great to get a direct explanation of those events because they were very subjective. It was very weird. But it would have been great if the writer would have let us have a direct account of what happened via Constantine explaining it to the rest of the team. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
so we covered the Deadly Green first because if you're reading it, you really want to read the Deadly Green before you read issue number 5 because this whole group will end up here in issue number 5, having already completed all the actions from the Deadly Green. So if you're reading, read the Deadly Green first. Yep,
yeah.
Exactly. But now we're back into the Dark Crisis proper, issue number 5. We start where we left off before Black Adam fighting the Legion of Doom.
It's about to go down in this issue. Yeah, it was cool.
Right.
Just all out battle. Everyone fighting everyone. We get the cool little map of the multiverse. We see the same map that we typically see, but we see what exactly the darkness has infected just as a representation of it spreading. And during this fight, you know, people poured in. The John Kent's Justice League, if you will, ports in and saves Black Adam, gets him out of there. And we're back at the base. That was kind of just capping off that last issue.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, we get a view of Sideways, who we haven't seen in so long. You know, since geez, I can't even think when the last time he appeared. But that kind of, to me, again, that was kind of a shout out to the Crisis on Infinite Earths because they tried to include as many heroes as possible in the original Crisis, and you would have, you know, popping up out of nowhere, you would have this hero that would suddenly have a panel or two, and you'd say, oh, yeah, exactly. But the point, though, too, is, you know, Sideways is one of those dimension hopping type teleporting heroes, so it kind of makes perfect sense. So to your point, the Justice League comes in, they save Black Adam, they basically end up talking about, you know, what's going to go down, what they need to do, and then we flash back to Pariah, who has all of the Infinite Earths there. He has
great page, 2-page splash. All the Infinite Earths above him just standing there looking at it, telling his army that this is it. It's all been worth this. All the violence, it's all coming down to this. And the Green Lanterns that have been Kyle and is it Joe? Kyle and Joe that they had?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He's sitting there talking trash, and he's like, quit resisting, blah, blah, blah. They're going to stop you. I'm counting on it. The classic villain back and forth.
Exactly.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. But then we get to see the Batman from his world that he's on that we haven't seen yet because he's in the last of the specials that'll come out in November. But we see the Batman from his world, the world without a Justice League, and the Flash and Hal are there basically, and they're, you know, Batman is fighting them because he doesn't know who they are, and then finally Hal Jordan realizes that he has basically been Hal Jordan without his Green Lantern. It's all been an illusion, that he's had his ring the entire time.
I like how he snapped Batman out of the illusion by presenting the Bat family in front of him, really hitting him in the heartstrings.
Exactly. And we go back then to the picture of the multiverse, and we see the multiverse compared to the very first panel in the issue.
Yeah, it's spreading like monkeypox.
Exactly, and there's even more, you know, darkness everywhere.
Yeah.
So we then go back to Dick Grayson, who's talking, and we see that the Teen Titans Academy students decide that they want to help, and then see Me Too, and as you
time out. During that scene when everyone's kind of converging on the Hall of Justice, we're getting a little bit of narration dialogue, and it's talking about how we're all going to have to come together as teams to overcome this. And we get one panel where it says some rejected it, and it looks like Jaime is staring at the Scarab to me in that one panel, dead center of the page. But then next to
Yep.
it says, while a few new faces stepped up, and we get the first, as they'll call it, the first cameo of the new Red Canary right there on that page. So that's this. This is now a book. If you own, you will retire on this. Buy every copy you can find. You will be a millionaire. Red Canary cited.
Oh, there you go. Although it's not her first cover appearance, that was a couple issues back on one of the B or C things. The Dan Mora that actually did.
Did they already release that one?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It may even be included in our giveaway that we're doing. The first cover appearance of Red Canary.
Little on the nose there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, everyone's converging. We got the Teen Titans showing up. You got everybody, and we even get Beast Boy showing back up. Ironically, cosplaying Slade Wilson.
Exactly. Which is, it's like, okay, I think Deathstroke is kind of like, you took my eye, I'll take yours, type of a thing.
So Deathstroke shot him in the face in that first issue, and he's out of the hospital bed wearing the eye patch. Blah blah blah.
Yep, and then we, as they're talking, from off panel comes the group that we saw in the deadly green, carrying Pariah's machine, and it says again, it was the machine Pariah built on his world that triggered the destruction of the original Infinite Earths. And then we get Superman talking to Damian, saying it's bad, it's real bad, and then he kind of takes Dr. Light with him, and they go off, and we'll see them again in the Dark Circle of the Dark Army.
Mm-hmm.
And out of nowhere comes the Flash family talking about, we've got incoming. Basically, everything's starting to shake again, and we get once again Deathstroke, who just is relentless in his attacks on all of these legacy heroes. And
he didn't give him much time. They just teleported Black Adam out of that fight, and it didn't take no time for Deathstroke to teleport right there. Like, he is relentless. Like, I could really feel the momentum of his attacks in this book. Which, as I'm reading it, like, ooh man, we're not getting much time to breathe here, because that whole JSA time, that scene, that was in and out. Like, they popped up, like Superman literally ran in screaming, Pariah's controlling the darkness, like blah blah blah, and we got to go to the next thing. You can feel the rush. You can feel how chaotic this is, how they're on the verge of this crisis really exploding.
Right. And so Nightwing says, no matter what happens, remember Deathstroke is the target. And this is where then Black Adam comes in just before the moment of the issue. He basically starts berating him, says, you're a fool. You can't do anything. You don't know what you're doing. And he says, you are not the Justice League.
Sidekicks. He says, what makes you think sidekicks will succeed where so many others fail? The multiverse will not be saved by children. You are not the Justice League. Oh my God.
And Nightwing just kind of looks over his shoulder and says, we never were. We're the Titans.
So there you go to all the people that were hating on the book, that were crying about the generational characters and the New Age characters replacing the Justice League, when from the start they never were supposed to. No one ever pretended like they were. They have their own agency, their own. That was such a glorious moment to be led by Nightwing of all people. Like, it's just so proper. Like, it's completely natural progression right here. And like, that was just, like you said, the moment of the issue. Like, how subtle that panel was when Nightwing turned back and looked over his shoulder. He was in focus and everything else was slightly out of focus. And it was a wide panel shot. And him just to say calmly, we never were. Like, that was never his intention. Like, man, holy crap, let's fight.
Yeah,
let's fight.
And so to your point, they start fighting, and Deathstroke says basically, kill Nightwing. But then we flash to Superman on his world, on the Worlds Without a Justice League, and he's joined then by Barry and Diana and Hal and Bruce, who basically are trying to convince him to go.
I
And
think they're going to
um,
have to convince. They're prepared to convince him to go. Diana's standing there with the lasso in hand, ready to for whatever. They don't know what they're going to run into here. They don't know what
right,
his world looks like or what condition he'll be in. But he's just calmly when they get there. He's just leaning on the fence post, holding a picture of him, Lois, and John from the time that they had on this earth before that time he never had anywhere else.
right. And Hal Jordan says to Clark, he says, "You're surprisingly calm," and that's when Bruce says it's because he's angry. When he's really calm, it's because he's really angry. Um,
Mhm.
and when they end up talking to him, they realize that it's not going to be a battle. They don't have to fight him to get him to come with them because he says, "I have become lucid. This place is only a prison as far as our imagination will let it." And then that's when he says basically that it was a world, it was a great world, it was a happily ever after world, but it was a world without a Justice League.
And in the
And he
process of this conversation with him having it, he explains to him that he tried to escape countless times, but Pariah wouldn't let him. He used their minds to build this dream world. That's why he went lucid, so that this world has no hold over him anymore. And in the process of doing that, he's managed to harness this multiversal energy that this world is created out of, and he has embodied it, like showing that Superman isn't just fists. Like this is one of the smartest minds in the DC universe, and he's pulled that energy into himself
hmm it's just a
to
great,
get
great image.
this form of Superman that we're just now being introduced to that is big mad. He's so mad,
Um,
and the
and
entire
so
world just disintegrates around him. They just are in a white void, just looking at this version of Superman.
right, and they say, we have to get back to the real world, and Clark tells them we have to focus on what's real. And Hal says, well, so what exactly do we focus on? And Superman being Superman, it's like, what else? Our friends.
And he holds, and it's important to point out, he holds up his hand,
Yep.
and just like Pariah looks at when he's using his machine, he gets one of the little spheres like that you can. It's kind of like a crystal ball effect. He's able just to materialize one of those. So this version of Superman that they haven't gone into details on what he's capable of, just he is fueled by multiversal energy right now.
Mhm. And then we get our third scene of the multiverse map, now even almost entirely covered in darkness. And we can see, we're back to Pariah again. Um, and then we basically jump to the heroes from the World Without a Justice League are now all together, and they're about to face down Pariah. Where he is, and he says, Superman says, "You're done, Pariah. Stop this now." Um, and Pariah is like, no, 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 no. Your very existence is tied to these new worlds created in your image. If these worlds die, you will be erased. And
And then
then
we
we
cut
jump
back to
back
the
to,
yeah.
oh, go
Then
ahead.
it's going full steam in the fight. The Deathstroke against the Titans and it's bouncing back and forth. But that was kind of made me wonder, like how he said, if these worlds die, you will be erased. Like, are we supposed to believe that the Justice League that was put into those worlds were legitimately killed, and then like a different version of them, like not was a copy of them made, or is that actually them? Were they teleported, or they really die?
Right. Right. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know yet. But I love the way it was a constant jump. We would get a panel of the Teen Titans fighting Darkseid. I mean, starting Deathstroke. Then we jump back to Pariah, and then it was literally panel after panel, back and forth, showing the two fights going on concurrently at the exact same time. And then we get to basically the end where Black Adam says, "I was right. We weren't enough. Today truly is the end. The true darkness is here." And we get this one-page panel with everyone from the Spectre to Darkseid to Necron to Eclipso to Doomsday to Deathstroke to
Nimrod, Ares,
everyone in their
yeah.
chains, chained by the darkness. And it looks like, okay, you know what? Now finally, Pariah and Deathstroke and his group are joined together, and we basically, I think we're going to have, a two-issue fight.
Yeah, he's
Donnybrook.
invaded Earth Zero proper at this point.
Right. We're going to have a two-issue Donnybrook at the end for the survival of the DC universe, or what the universe is going to look like when we come out of this.
So I was wondering how they're even going to have, like, because we saw the Justice League as well as the Justice League Incarnate, which we still have not heard tell of since they suffered the same fate as the Justice League. We saw how little they could do against Pariah, and now we're right back to where we started, them against Pariah. So I'm wondering what's going to be the ace in the hole. Is it going to be this Superman in this specific form that will have some kind of ability to do something? Otherwise, Pariah can just dust them all.
Right.
So it's interesting. Hell, you got Spectre and Eclipso on the same bad guy team. So what are you really going to do here? Like, there's got to be something that hadn't even been hinted at yet. They're going to have to pull from somewhere. But they're outmatched right now.
Yeah, they really are. But obviously that's kind of what you want in these big events, right? Is you want the absolutely worst thing. You want the heroes to be able to overcome the absolute biggest thing that you possibly couldn't imagine that they could possibly overcome.
It makes me wonder what's Damian up to, because he took off and it said to follow Damian in the Dark Army one shot. So that Damian might be on the way to go find our answer. What if he goes and pulls like something like the Demon Nazar, like some of the bad guy magic user? They got to find something that's not just swinging fists, shooting arrows kind of thing. That's not going to work in this situation.
Right. And they've, and I'm not sure we mentioned this last time, but they've announced an issue at the end of this as well called Dark Crisis: The Big Bang, which is supposed to be this, basically the start of this new, and they have it, the dawn of the DC universe as well coming as well. So obviously they have not only universe changing, but it seems as though universe birthing events that are coming up. So
the resettling of everything after these, it's par for the course. We have the Infinite Frontier one shot where the Spectre and Wonder Woman traveled across the multiverse, looking at the current state of it after the last big event, kind of thing as well.
Yeah, but these were, I think, two of the most satisfying issues so far of the entire Dark Crisis.
Absolutely
event.
Delivered big moments, huge story progression, just like those fist pumping moments where you just feel rallied with the characters. Payoffs that are a little bit meta, like with them addressing the readers, like we were never the Justice League, we're the Titans. Like there's so much to really spotlight in this. Joshua Williamson, for being his first like actual big event, not just little crossovers, he's proven himself majorly. Like I do want to see him stick the landing, but as of now, he's beyond proven himself as capable for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't forget, before you leave, don't forget to make sure you leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification button. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, because as I mentioned before, we're going to have a huge giveaway at the end of all of this. We're going to be giving away the entire Dark Crisis event. When I say entire, I don't mean just the Dark Crisis proper. You'll get your copy of Dark Crisis: The Deadly Green as well. You'll get all the tie-in issues from The Flash, to Dark Crisis: Young Justice. We're going to throw in some specials in there too, maybe even a foil cover. Who knows? Crisis on Infinite Earths. There you go. Right.
So again, where it all started.
Exactly. So again, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, hit the comments. Make sure you go over and subscribe to Mark if you're not already subscribed. He's got his 1500 coming up this Wednesday, coming up in just 2 days.
Yes.
Wednesday night, you have your 1500.
Roughly 9 p.m., so go back, enter before it's too late.
Mm-hmm. And so that's going to do it for this issue, for this episode of Dark Crisis, DC Comics Dark Crisis Deep Dive. As always, I am Paul.
I'm Mark.
Yeah, but we are Legion.
You're now leaving Sector 2815.